Hello, everybody. I know what you're thinking. It's 5 minutes early, but I have a premature broadcasting problem. Hi, I'm your host, Axel Roast, the Serpentine Cow. I hope everybody had themselves a pleasant Browns viewing party last night. And if you didn't, and you were watching the Indians, what the fuck's the matter with you? No. That ended up happily too. So all of Cleveland was very happy. Yesterday. Joining me at this early moment right now are the loyalists, I call them. There's Rox and Jake. Others will be joining us shortly. I was explaining that the halftime and post-game shows were done on a different platform called StreamYard, which in certain ways I like better because it allows me a little bit more flexibility with YouTube. This one, if I don't get the show started, once it sorts out what the end address is, it will change it on me. And that's not a real good thing. So I'm still ironing out issues with Zoom. And I see somebody else is trying to jump on the program, and that would be Rick, of course. And so we'll promote him to panelist status as well and unmute all. Hi, Rick. How you doing?
Not too bad. Heard a little bad news regarding the Browns today, though.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to start out with, folks. If you haven't heard and you're living in a cave, Antonio Callaway has been suspended for 4 games. Before anyone says anything, what I'm going to do is I'm looking right now at Rick, but all of you, if I'm talking, should be seeing me full screen on YouTube. Now, the reason I'm doing this is I want you to look into my eyes. I want you to peer into my soul and listen to what I have to say. Get rid of him now. Get rid of him now. Done. Zero tolerance. The guy isn't that good. A. B. We took a chance on this guy by drafting him when nobody else would, and this is how he fucking thanks us. Josh Gordon'd out to death. Please, Cod Almighty, fish of the sea, please just let him go. Now, what we do know is that all of this talk about Antonio Callaway, it was like, well, geez, why isn't Antonio Callaway, why isn't he running with the ones in preseason? And why is he running with the twos and he's not really getting that much action? It's like the Browns knew. This isn't something you wake up in the morning and Dorsey goes, yeah, this isn't like that. The league tells you in advance. They knew what was going on. So if you're wondering why all the reps for the Jalen Strongs and all the reps for the Montgomerys and all that, there you have it. And Rashard Higgins has all but beaten him out anyway for the number 3 receiving slot. If anything, Callaway was fighting for the number 4 slot. And we have other people who can get the job done and people that we can rely on to be there week in and week out, except maybe for the possibility of injuries. So if the Browns have learned anything with a guy who, since we made this draft of him and plucked him out of obscurity, all he did was get himself arrested for marijuana possession, and they found a gun in his car. Mm-hmm. Fuck Antonio Callaway. Fuck Josh Gordon. And we'll be talking about Antonio Brown very shortly. Fuck him too. And he don't even play for my team. Fuck him too.
Not a good day to be named Antonio.
Not at all. Now I'm going to turn to my loyal panelists, and I'll start with Jake. Jake, now that I have spilled my beans, what do you do with Antonio Callaway?
I would just get rid of him. We have too much depth there, and it showed yesterday we don't need him. There's no reason to keep a guy like that.
You know what's remarkable to me is that he sees that. he's a guy who sees that. I mean, he's there practicing every day, and he sees all the people fighting for a position, and he does this anyway. He don't give a fuck.
Well, they played him till he was injured. I mean, he messed up something in his leg yesterday.
His ankle.
It's pretty obvious.
And I talked about that. I was tweeting about that and talking about it on the post game show as well. Is that he wasn't moving well anyway. Rick, tell me, are you on board?
Yeah, actually, I think he may have done us a favor. We needed to thin out the receiver herd. He's, appreciate your contribution there, Antonio. I got 2 words for you. Drew Rosenhaus. Might want to hook up with Duke Johnson, see if they can get something going for her. Yeah, maybe give him his number. But
all right, now
Monken said that he was out of shape when he came in August. So
that was the other thing.
Like he was,
Baker Mayfield said how great he looked, and then all of a sudden he was out of shape. I think the Browns knew about this. They were poor mouthing him from the beginning because they knew what was going on. Rox, I want you, because you know nothing about what we're talking about, I want you to tell Antonio Callaway to go fuck himself, please.
Antonio Callaway, go fuck yourself.
Okay, good. Very good. Now, we're all in agreement. Isn't that wonderful?
Golf clap. Yes.
Togetherness is such a great thing. Now, I know what I'm going to get. I'm going to get the inevitable backlash that I always seem to get from fans. But he's our deep threat. Josh Gordon was our deep threat. Here's the deal. He doesn't run the best patterns. This is why Rashard Higgins beat him out. He doesn't have the best hands. That's why Rashard Higgins beat him out, okay? And you saw what the Browns offense can be just for one little 2-minute drill, not throwing the deep ball per se, but working the middle of the field, working the checkdowns, moving the ball down the field. And Bronk is trying to get in here, and I feel obligated. Anybody from England, deserves the promotion to panelist status. So here comes Bronk without any further ado. And
also, can I mention that Higgins looked really, really good after the catch yesterday?
Yeah.
He was going into tackles, which I don't like in the preseason, but he was not scared to go for those extra 2 yards in the end zone.
Let me tell you something. He made a great move to get to the position where he had a chance to lunge for the end zone. And this was not something that we saw last year from him. And you can see him wearing confidence. And he's wearing the number 3 receiver on this team. I mean, you can see it all over him. So as far as the deep threat thing, look, Baker Mayfield is going to find an open receiver. And if we need any help deep, there are guys who can get down the field. And they'll do it without carrying guns in their car and taking illegal substances. So, Bronk, now that you've joined us, and I see that you should be unmuted, but you're not. So I will, I don't know why it's showing you muted. Are you there, Bronk?
Hello.
Yeah, that's funny. It's showing me that your microphone is turned off, yet I'm hearing you. All right.
Oh, that's weird.
That's something that I can report to Zoom about.
I want to say that I really like the StreamYard setup. I think the cameras were crisper, the audio was better, and the fact that you were able to control people and ration out the speaking, I think is very important for particularly these post-game shows when you want new people on here. So I thought that went really well last night.
Well, I mean, obviously somebody agreed with you because we're over 400 views now on the post-game show alone. And between the two, we're up over 630 views. And that's for a measly preseason game.
It's going to be big. It's going to be huge, this thing. And the one thing I would suggest, the one thing I don't like is the fat woman Roethlisberger gift that you put up for the...
Yeah. That is a bit disturbing, isn't it?
Some people have to eat. I mean, I don't care if Tony DeGraff and Brian...
Hey, they'll hit anything. They'll hit anything.
I don't care if they find that hot or not, man. Just put something...
The reason that woman is a Roethlisberger fan is that he physically couldn't drag her into the restroom.
No, she had to drag him into the restroom.
I don't think she could get in the restroom, like, unless it was double door. I mean,
And Rox, I hope you're following the YouTube chat room, because that's the other thing about StreamYard that is really lovely, is that I can follow everything that's being typed into the YouTube chat on StreamYard on my own StreamYard studio. And that's why I'm able to click on what people say and flash them on the screen. It's ideal for the format of the halftime and post-game shows. Now, for this, it's a little different, because this is kind of like PTI without the big budget and talent.
Without any talent, really.
But it's nice to have, a group of people on who are regular panelists, and we share more screen time together, as opposed to the hit and miss nature of the post-game shows, where I'm trying to get people to call in, and it's going to be a challenge, because people, to get people to jump through hoops is difficult. But the bottom line is that I want to open up the format to enable people to do that.
Well, I think, for a rule for the post-game and halftime, you should always have them have their video camera on, because they'll be tempted, if they don't have it on, to troll or just be dicks or whatever. And if you got like 1,000 people watching the show, you don't want somebody.
No, actually, I like people who try to troll me, because I have more fun. From my days as a stand-up comic, I love hecklers. Hecklers, you bury a heckler. My goodness. So, Bronk, what do you think about Callaway?
I think John Dorsey's on the phone now trying to get rid of him.
yeah.
I think Dorsey's trying, and so they're not going to say anything at all. I saw that little, half a paragraph that Dorsey released about it, saying they're very disappointed. Aren't we all?
Yeah.
Why don't we get a 6th round pick for him or something? He ain't starting the season. I mean, if they got rid of Josh Gordon that quickly last year, they're going to get rid of Callaway. And
Josh Gordon's a lot more talented than Antonio Callaway.
My God, I mean, some homeless guy runs back kicks better than Callaway.
Yeah, I was not impressed with his punt returning ability. And honestly, his hands, he took a funny route to the ball a lot. He was a raw piece of work in progress. This is not a finished product, nor is it ever going to be a finished product, because he's not from Finland.
Exactly. I mean, I'm going to try to ignore it.
Thank you.
Anyway, Callaway. Oh, you blew my train of thought right there with that joke.
Follow the teleprompter, Brock.
Oh, jeez.
Train of thought off the rails.
I mean, the thing about Callaway is, I don't know.
Bronk has a senior moment. Go ahead.
Don't we all?
What'd you say?
I don't know how popular he is in the clubhouse, or whether he's a good teammate or anything like that. So I don't know whether the receiver room likes him or what. So I have no idea. Maybe you do. But, even that could possibly save him if he's a good teammate and they like him. But
I don't think that Baker Mayfield has the strong feelings about him that he has with Rashard Higgins. What he said about Higgins was, hey, we were both second unit guys last year. We worked out a timing and a chemistry that I'm currently trying to work on with OBJ. He said, and what he said about Callaway was, it was good to see Callaway come in, stronger than he was, faster, and that so that he would be able to compete for a job with better players on the team. Now, that is not an absolute endorsement in my mind. And, I don't think the Browns are going to miss him. It was just like when the Indians sent Danny Salazar home. It's like, get the fuck out of here. That's exactly what I would have done too. You're hurt and you're not going to tell anybody. Fine. You go home. And that's what I say about Antonio Callaway. You take your 4-game suspension, and, this gives – and you know what the good part of this is?
What?
Is that the guys, not just the Jalen Strongs and the Montgomerys, but even a guy like Sheehy Giuseppe, who's got these crazy dreams about making the football team, which are very unlikely. But these guys are going to work their ass off to make an NFL roster and not piss it away like this.
Exactly.
And these are non-drafted kinds of guys. Jalen Strong, 3 years in the league and never really caught on anywhere. He looks like kind of a possession receiver over the middle kind of guy. Montgomery, who could be a real sleeper in this mix because everyone's been telling me how this guy's looked good in practices and limited opportunities. You kind of, I'd like to see a guy like Montgomery get on the field with Baker. Sure. I would like to see him have an opportunity to catch the ball, run the patterns for the first string offense on a couple of plays, just so that we make the right decision on who the fourth and fifth receivers are going to be on this team. But as for Callaway, go convince somebody else because, I'm so sick of the release statements that the agents release. I own this one. Yeah. How about the other ones? Shit, fuck you. If you can see the lower part of my body, I'm grabbing my groin. Okay, here's my hand. Here's my groin, and I'm saying, own this, biatch.
That's a great idea. Let's call up Gettleman and say we'll give you Callaway and a third-round pick for Zeitler back.
Jeff and Bama's in the chat room and says hello.
Hi, Jeff and Bama. How you doing? So that's kind of the bad news about the Browns. The good news about the Browns is we came out relatively unscathed. Kalis has a concussion, and who was the guy who got hurt?
Oh, the guy with the Z, Zeitler, whatever.
Zettler?
Yeah, and he actually made some contributions last year. But again, boy, the defensive line looks deep, and a guy like Lawrence looked like a goddamn freight train on that one play. I mean, we actually getting guys into the backfield. It's like, wow, how does this work? And we didn't even see Ogunjobi. We didn't really see that much Myles Garrett. We didn't see a whole lot of the frontline guys. We saw a lot of the second and third team guys, and and it still looked pretty damn good. So pretty encouraged by all that. So we came up.
Can I make a comment about the line, the defensive line?
Sure.
Look at the plays that Washington was running, like the first two possessions for a first preseason game. They were scared shitless. They were running these bubble screen shit draw play things. They were like, we know we can't block these guys, so we're going to try to protect our guys from getting each. They didn't run a decent normal drop back pass or a normal handoff in any of that. It's like we had them already beat.
Yeah, well, what I noticed really from the start of the game, and it has a lot to do with the hand you're holding. How big your balls are, I guess, at a poker table is what cards you're holding in a lot of cases. And, I guess Gruden doesn't feel like he has that good of a hand because they came out, and I got to tell you, Case Keenum got very little arm. I don't see, any difference between that and Colt McCoy. To be very honest with you, there's not a lot of arm strength there, and that became evident when Haskins came into the game. But this is kind of like the Wizard of Oz. One needs a brain, one needs a heart, one needs courage. In this instance, one's got an arm, one doesn't, but the other one has the sense not to throw it into three people. They're not holding a real strong hand in Washington, and they came out looking like a team that didn't want to get hurt. They looked like a team that was just going to run finesse plays and wasn't really, and they ran into a buzzsaw. Cleveland was just ready to just rumble right through them. And if not for a red wine, there goes your man behind you. Yeah.
Don't let me cover alone.
It's called Cover 2 for a reason. Red Wine, making a couple of mistakes, but one that led to an immediate 7 points. They did nothing else really for the rest of the game.
That was one play. They had that one play.
Yeah.
And if
And
our
that's
first
busted
team,
coverage.
they did
Busted
nothing.
coverage. Nothing. And there was nobody who even flashed on that team. I mean, if you want to talk about Haskins, that's fine. Nice arm, but no sense about where he's throwing the ball. This is very Deshaun Kaiser-esque. He can look good on three.
Oh, it's better than Kaiser. Come on.
Well, I'm saying a guy with an arm, but with little judgment as to where he throws the ball. And look, you can say what you want about how bad Deshaun Kaiser was. All I'm pointing out about Haskins is, how does Burris sack him? I mean, Haskins went deer in the headlights
Yeah, he did.
on that play. He didn't try to roll out and extend the play. He had his eyes fixed on something down the field, and he couldn't get out of the way. And that's kind of like walking and chewing gum at the same time. This is a skill that an NFL quarterback has to do, is to be able to, A, spot things downfield. If it's not there, feel the pressure, roll from the pressure, revisualize the field, make a decision. But what I saw from Haskins is what I see from most rookie quarterbacks. If the primary is not open, I'm going to tuck the ball and run with it. And that's dangerous business in the NFL. And he did that on a couple of occasions. So
to be fair, that's not just rookie quarterbacks. That was Tyrod Taylor's whole modes of operation.
yeah, well, I mean, and look where it got him. He's enshrined in the love canal at Buffalo. Never mind.
Mr. Ferguson in the chat room says, how many takeaways will the Browns defense have this season?
It's funny you're talking about that. Everybody's talking about Mac Wilson picking 2 and Greedy picking 1, and everyone's talking about turnovers, and that was supposed to be Greg Williams' modus operandi, and now we're talking about that. I don't know. That is a matter of who we play, what the score is, what kinds of chunk plays another team needs, all of that. What I can say is this: I saw our defensive line and our linebackers in their backfield more than I saw in years past. I mean, Takataki was back there, and the defensive line was consistently forcing them to run east-west and getting nowhere in the process. There were none of those gaping holes up the middle. So I think the turnovers are things that are if come maybes, good fortune, being in the right place at the right time. Mac Wilson the ball just didn't, get zeroed into him. He was playing in the spot of the field, getting the right drop if you're playing a zone. Those are the important things. But I think that you'll see the individual effort with the athleticism of the players giving us a better chance of getting these types of turnovers, because, as long as we stay within our parameters that are on the field where we're supposed to be, the ball will eventually come our way. And we're not going to be facing the greatest quarterbacks week in and week out. So if the ball hangs, we have some guys who can actually make a move on the balls. So, and we're still not seeing Demarius Randall. There's a lot we're not seeing here, folks. There's a reason why guys like Redwine are playing out there early on with the ones. It's because there are people who are not physically ready to go yet, or are being protected because they're vets and they have nothing to prove in the preseason. So if you're going to force a number out of me, I don't even know. How many did the Browns get last year? I don't think it was many. But
Brian Coleman throws out the number 35.
This year, I don't know what we got last year, but I mean, would be
not for last year, but that's what he's predicting for this year.
Yeah. And again, that would be like 2 a game, a little more than 2 a game. And that might be a little rich. I don't know. But what I want to see is, the turnovers are like frosting on the cake. I want to see tackled behind the line of scrimmage in the running game. I want to see quarterback sacks. I want to see the things that force them into the 3rd and longs that you can take advantage of and convert into turnovers. Those are the things that become important. It isn't just about stripping guys. You got to tackle guys. that means you got to tackle them 3-4 yards behind the line of scrimmage. If they get, if it's 2nd and 4, then you stuff a run and then it's 3rd and 7. Now you've got a chance at something. If you sack a quarterback on a 2nd down or 1st down pass, then it's 1st or 2nd and long, then you're really setting yourself up, especially if you're playing against a Case Keenum kind of guy who's notorious for not making chunk plays. So, got that. So to me, that's all good.
I mean, the thing that I don't know whether this is ever going to be a stat, but I think it should be a stat. The amount of decline penalties that the Browns had yesterday. And you know what that means? That's what championship teams do, because they still beat the other team even when the other team is cheating. So if you can get that touchdown pass when you get an interference call on the same play, or get that holding penalty when you would have sacked the quarterback, or you already got them at 3rd down and 18, they hold you again, you decline. I mean, somebody should keep track of the number of decline penalties that teams, forego during a game. There must have been about a half dozen last night that the Browns declined. It's an amazing number.
I'll tell you, it's another thing that's really nice for me, and that's some consistency and clarity from the head coach. And, what he says and what he does seem to be on the same page. I was a little bit concerned that we had the ball. We didn't just ram it down their throat when it was, 2nd and goal. We tried 2 pass plays, and I thought, well, that's not really what I would have done. But, what Freddie Kitchens has said all along is that we are working on specific things. We are, we want to be able to do things if teams know what we're going to do before we do it, which is why I wanted them to run from the half-yard line and stuff it down their throat. But he also comes out with a 2-minute drill, which who would see that coming, because he wanted to expose his first unit, as little as possible and put them under the gun. They only had 1 timeout to use and the 2 minutes to go and do whatever they were going to do, and that was their time on the field. And that way he doesn't expose them to much risk of injury, but he gets something positive out of this.
They went over the crowd. They went over the crowd by doing that. That quick touchdown must have set the whole stadium on fire.
I don't even think it had anything to do with that. I just think that Freddie said, this is what I want you to work on. And the only thing I felt bad about is that Seibert didn't get a chance to kick a field goal. We had to watch Greg Joseph, the drunken lineup, and he ram another one off the goalpost on an extra point. We've seen that far too often in 2 seasons, and I sure as hell hope he's not the kicker. We may end up having to scour the wire for a kicker the way it's looking in Cleveland, and I don't think you want to do that. You end up with guys like Parkey, God forbid. And it turns out Parkey was a nickname because he's got Parkinson's disease. Oh. So, yeah, I'm sorry.
Maybe he was just praying, please let me get this through the upright.
Yeah. Actually, I mean, watching Greg Joseph doing this reminds like Mr. Magoo.
Checking the wind?
I don't know.
Let's see, do I want to hook it or slice it this time?
I thought he was at a Snoop Dogg concert waving in his hand in the air like he just don't care. Okay. I don't know. I don't really know what in the fuck he's doing, but it doesn't work. So stop doing it.
Well, they should really decide on one holder. I think they're still fucking around with alternating holders and doing shit like that. So maybe
I don't think Greg Joseph strikes the ball correctly, and I want to see Seibert kick and give him an opportunity. I would give Seibert all of the second game just to see what he can do, because he didn't get a chance to do shit yesterday. It just didn't pan out that way. One thing that I did notice as far as the first drive of the game, which I think is what we talked about in the week or 2 leading into this game, is Baker's feeling that he doesn't have to get it all now, but that he's able to pick his shots. He used the middle of the field throwing to Jalen Strong and throwing to Dontrell Hilliard. And getting, the handoff draws to Chubb that got first down on a single run. He was mixing it up, and everything was kind of intermediate and short and getting first downs. And then he struck in a cover 2 scheme. He struck and with Higgins in the end zone. But what it showed me is this is what he has worked on, is a mental approach that it's like, I don't have to make the biggest plays in the world. I need to move the ball down the field and set the defense up for what I want to do. And those checkdowns that we're seeing in practice, this is no mistake. This is not an oddity. This isn't dink and dunk football. But the damn Redskins came out in a deep cover 2, like they were afraid of what might get behind them. And so Baker just took whatever was in front of them and just moved the ball right down the field. And it looked like a prevent defense. And it shouldn't have been in the first possession of the game. But they were so concerned with the deep ball. In fact, the only risky pass was the touchdown pass to Higgins, which I thought was going to get picked because there were, 3 men in the general area, but it was put where only one could get to it, and that was Higgins. Other than that, I mean, there were no defenders really in the frame of the footage. If you watch the receptions, there was nobody close to the guys catching the ball because it was like everybody had dropped way back here. You would think that linebackers would be contesting Dontrell Hilliard, but no. You would think that somebody would have been up on Jalen Strong, but no. But the running backs especially had clear paths to the ball, and once they caught the ball, had easy access to run 10 more yards after they caught it. Very interesting, but it's good to see that Freddie is doing what he said he was going to do, and it's more important that the process becomes more important right now than the win or loss in the preseason game. So I trust that by the time the Titans come to town, that we're going to have a game plan that's worthwhile. Jake, any concerns about the offense in terms of Monken's role at this point?
I mean, not yet. It's pretty vanilla at this point, so I don't know what we can really see. I mean, that looked like a little bit of dump down to the backs, some quick hitches, and that one pass in the end zone. But, I mean, that's nothing out of the ordinary for the NFL, so I'm not sure we can really see much in one game.
It's, and again, I don't think, they talk about the that whole, what do they call it? The air raid offense. Is that what they,
Yeah.
But I read about the author of that offense, and what I read, I think is very true. That the offense is not designed to be the big bomb. It's designed to be the best route runners are the ones who are rewarded, because when you're sending so much verticality down the field, it's how the receivers break off their pattern and the chemistry they have with the quarterback to be able to lead the defenders into thinking they're going deep, to get really self-conscious about covering them deep, then breaking the patterns off and having clear, wide open receptions. And really, that's kind of what happened here in week 1. At the beginning of the game, they were on their heels. The Browns were attacking, and they were kind of flinching, and everything went underneath where it was wide open. And I think that's why Rashard Higgins is going to have, if he stays healthy, quite a year. He's a very good route runner, and he's got good hands. And that's really what we're looking for, more than a speed birder like Callaway. We're looking for people who can run patterns and have good footwork. That's at least what I think the Browns should be looking for. Any comments on the panel about Sheehy Giuseppe? What do you think his odds are of making this team, and why? We will start with Rick on this.
Certainly got everyone's attention last night. Looked like, the the entire sideline went ahead and did a gator pile on him when he got in the end zone.
Did you see how out of breath he was?
Well, I think it's because if you have 50 or 60 guys jump on top of you, you're going to have problem breathing after a while.
Yeah.
If it's legit 4.3 speed, I'd say, put him back there. Let's see what he can do in the next game. But he did everything you could think of to try to, get on the field to make a name for himself with all this, sleeping out in the field or whatever to get a tryout. And, at least last night he was able to capitalize on it. I'm hoping, rooting for the underdog, I'm hoping it follows through.
Ishmael Hyman clotheslined him in a celebration before the rest of the team got to him. Son of a bitch clotheslined him. So, woof, that got his back, and then everyone jumped on top of him. He was so out of breath. It was like, it's like, I don't think he was that tired from running the distance of the punt return. I think that he just had it wrung out of him.
Call me Ishmael.
Yeah. So what do you think his odds are, Rick, of making the team?
The size is going to be a problem, but if he gets cut, it won't be because of lack of effort. I think he will do whatever he can, and wherever, if he'll volunteer to do anything, I think, just to stay on the team. So if he gets cut, it won't be from lack of effort. I think he's going to give it all he's got.
Bronk, what are his odds of making the team?
I think he sticks around somehow. If not on the team, then on the taxi squad, they can manage that, the practice squad. I think he's got a chance. I think he'll probably have more kickoff and punt returns to try now that Callaway's in the doghouse, or should be in the doghouse, and he may, break another one. And if he's like back there returning punts, and other teams are afraid of him, that means that they are always going to kick towards the sideline or kick it out of bounds. We gain 10 yards automatically just from the threat of having a good punt returner back there.
Right.
So if you have like 7 punts that you're going to make the other team do, with our defense, it's very possible. That's 70 extra yards that you're giving Baker Mayfield that he wouldn't otherwise have if we, had the normal jackasses that we've had turning punts for the past 20 years, other than Travis Benjamin and Josh Cribbs. The rest of them have been horrific. They have been really bad, not just a little bit bad. So I just hope that he gets another chance and he breaks 1 or 2 and he doesn't fumble. And then they'll find a place for him.
Jake, what is the chance of him making the team?
I think they're pretty good. He has a low ego, and I think he's one of those guys who will just be willing to be a returner just to be on the team. And that's a very good quality to have.
Any of you guys, Rick, you might remember the McLaughlin Group, the show on television?
PBS.
Issue 1.
Yeah. No,
Pat Buchanan and
I forget who McLaughlin was the host, so I'll do him. I'll do him. So Jake says, I think that's a great thing. It's like, final word? No way. That would be
bye.
My feeling is that I agree with you, Jake. The guy would do anything to make the roster, and honestly, and that might even be, munching down on Freddie Kitchens' nutsack. I mean, which is really a scary, horrible thought, and not a delicious treat.
Not a good visual.
No, not at all. But the problem is, will the Browns want to own a guy on the 53-man roster that only returns kicks and punts?
He also didn't catch it clean as well, as you said.
Yeah, he bobbled that. He caught it with his body. You got to catch it with your hands, and that was a little scary to me. But be that as it may, it's he has no size for special teams playing on the other side of special teams, and it's a real good feel-good story. It's kind of like a Rudy story, isn't it? Except it doesn't have that horrible, fucking nauseating ending where everyone's Rudy. I can't make out what they're saying in the student section. I think it's Judy. Judy, I think that they want to fuck one of the cheerleaders. You know, it's like, this is one of the dumbest movies I ever saw in my life, fucking Rudy. Like Sean Astin is a goddamn running back. Please make it stop. You know, where he's a defensive guy who's a tough guy, even though he's 5'3". It's like, fuck you, Rudy. But this really is quite a story. A guy who hadn't played a football game for 3 years and has not been taken seriously. And if nothing else, that is on video. And it is something that he will carry with him his whole life. And he'll show his children and his grandchildren that, especially if he doesn't end up in the NFL, he'll actually get to meet his grandchildren. So that's kind of a bonus in and of itself. You know, Freddie Kitchens now is saying that Duke Johnson didn't make up the pulled hamstring injury, just to kind of shut that noise up. Do not question Duke's professionalism, Kitchen said, of the injury that sidelined him. Duke had pulled a hamstring. As an organization, you don't want him to come back on a pulled hamstring. Then he pulls it again and he's out for a month. We were trying to get him ready for the season, Kitchen said. We weren't trying to get him ready to play tonight. I would not question Duke's professionalism if I were you. Then he went on to say, but I would question his belief and his agent's belief that he's an every down player because the motherfucker's hurt all the time. I was just saying that's the part of the quote you never get from any other show, especially with the word motherfucker in it. Yeah, so yeah,
paraphrasing.
Yeah, you know, the fact that Hilliard didn't exactly have a great game, you know, if we end up having to look at LeGarrette Blount, I mean, that's a scary kind of thing. So maybe the other Johnson, or as I referred to him on the show yesterday, the bigger Johnson. I know. I have this fixation and it's wrong, it's sexist, but I'm doing it for Rocks more than anything else in the world because she loves that TV show, and you know, so if it's a bigger Johnson, it's a better Johnson. That's, you know, and
right now Callaway say, did somebody say Blunt?
Oh God.
My mind wanders, but doesn't get very far.
Yeah, and Gerard Warren is probably sitting back saying, damn, I should have had my gun in pieces rather than one whole gun, you know? There are smarter ways of being a criminal in this world. So I don't think anybody's questioning the Duke Johnson thing. I think we're more looking at what we're going to do for the running back position. I just don't think Dontrell Hilliard is the guy.
Okay. I mean, the worst thing he did was that holding penalty at the end of the first half, which I think is probably what lit the fuse.
No, he fumbled the ball, and you can't do that. You can't leave the ball exposed when you're trying to go headfirst into the end zone, unless you're Ernest Biner and actually do other things really well in the past. But if you're trying to make a team, that's not a good way to make the team. My concern about Hilliard isn't one game. It's that he is neither fish nor fowl. I mean, we're looking for a guy who, if Nick Chubb gets hurt, is going to be able to step in and play the position. And what we have there is kind of a one-trick pony who catches the ball out of the backfield. He's not powerful enough to run over people, and he's not fast enough to run around them. The beauty of what we always would refer to in my generation as the, the Zonka and Mercury Morris and Kick trilogy, the triad of players for the undefeated Dolphins. Zonka
$1 million backfield.
The what?
$1 million backfield. That's what they called it, right?
Yeah, I mean, those guys, Zonka would run you over. Jim Kick would catch the ball out of the backfield. Mercury Morris was the fast one. And so, you could bring in different packages, and these guys would be able to get the job done. And that's what you have if Kareem Hunt ends up being any better a citizen than Callaway, which I have my doubts about, which is the other reason that I'm concerned about Dontrell Hilliard, is that really what you're doing is you're whoever's got that second running back position, you are cementing his role in a likely scenario that Kareem Hunt is no more mature or responsible than Antonio Callaway. And we'll be saying, oh, yeah, I own that. Just like he said, oh, yeah, I know I wasn't where I was supposed to be. But, I mean, the bottom line is he was where he was, and he knew damn well he wasn't supposed to be there, and he made the decision anyway. You said something earlier in the show, Bronk. Does my audio sound worse in this platform than it did?
We'll go back and look at it. I think the StreamYard looked and sounded a little bit better.
Yeah, the reason I asked is there's a feature in StreamYard that is an enhanced audio that I checked off in the box. And what it allegedly does is it adds a little bit, if you're using a regular good headset and microphone combination, of adding some of the noise cancellation things, eliminating certain artifacts from certain types of microphones. So, yeah, I'm going to go back and forth, A/B it after the show and see if there's any real difference or what it might be. Now I get everybody gets to do their thing about Mac Wilson, and we'll start with Jake on this. 2 interceptions in one game. He's been doing it regularly the past several practices. Is this just kind of like a guy who pitches three like shutouts in a row and Milt Wilcox? I'm going way back, Tribe fans. Milt Wilcox. Whoa. It ends up a flash, in the pan. Or do you think Mac Wilson's a real deal, Jake?
I think he's a starter. That's a minimum, and that's a steal for a 5th rounder. And I also think this was, I don't know if you noticed this or commented on the halftime show or postgame show, but they were trusting Talkie to run the defense yesterday, second team. You notice that? They were the coaches were giving him the plays on the sideline, and he
started on the field. He was on the field for the first play of the game defensively.
Yeah. I mean, that's a good sign too. I mean, we have a coverage linebacker and a linebacker who's a rookie calling the defense.
He was playing the mic. He was playing Schobert's position. And before the game, we talked about Talkie saying that is his designated role in his mind. And now the word is out that Mac Wilson told Talkie, their roommates, that he was going to pick off 2 passes, and he, as he put it, I think I might crib one of them. He takes it to the house. I mean, pretty unusual stuff for sure. But these 2 guys rooming together, that's an interesting scenario in and of itself. If you're Christian Kirksey or if you're Joe Schobert, you can't be too comfortable now, can you, Rick?
No. You got young, cheaper rookies ready for it. So
Schobert better work on his tackling skills.
In the chat room, Best Impact says Mac Wilson is the real deal, and he will replace Schobert.
Mac Wilson could not replace Schobert because Schobert's a Mike. He's a Mike linebacker, and Mac Wilson's a will linebacker. So, of course, with the 4-2-5, I don't know because we don't have the typical roles with linebackers. But what we're talking about are 2 linebackers, and I mean, Wilson and Talkie were on the field a large part of the game, and just getting reps and learning. And what I would say about Mac Wilson is not as good of a tackler in space as Talkie. And what I would say about Talkie is that he's not as good in open space coverage as Mac Wilson. But Talkie's not afraid to get his nose into the middle of something and hit somebody really hard. And he's very vocal. Mac Wilson, on the other hand, is not afraid to try to make an athletic play, but based on being on the right part of the field. I think on the overall, those are 2 young men who have an opportunity of growing together on this team. And if it's not this year, and I understand that Schobert has been the Mike linebacker and Best Impact. I shouldn't go against you because you corrected me on many occasions, but I would have to talk to Wilkes about the concept of the 4-2-5 as to who plays what roles. And it was interesting watching Jannard Avery talking to Mac Wilson on the sidelines after the pick. And if you really begin to wonder if Avery, who didn't play, if his role is going to be lined up at the line of scrimmage more often. I mean, because the one thing that Avery had coming into the league was that he was a strong guy. He was like a weightlifting guy, and that he could push people around and he'd get into the backfield as a pass rusher, but that he was useless in coverage. Now, he did a little better than what I thought he could last year, but it looks to me like Mac Wilson knows where in the hell he's supposed to be on the field, and that he has an idea of what he wants to do if he gets his hands on the ball too. So
Mac has a role next year no matter what. No one on the team has that skill set he has. So he'll get a big role next year. And I think eventually Talkie can get there as well. Maybe not next year, but they both have a future, and Mac Wilson definitely has a good jump. He'll play a lot of snaps this year.
One of the funny moments of the game, Baker Mayfield, of course, with the perfect quarterback rating, 5 of 6, 77 yards, was Baker Mayfield whooping it up on the sideline when Kitchens threw the challenge flag on the non-touchdown reception by Callaway, which I thought the referees got correct. I know the guys on WEWS in Cleveland thought that it was a touchdown, but I don't think that was the case personally. But at any rate, did you see Mayfield going really apeshit behind Kitchens when Kitchens decided to throw the flag? It's like a real enthusiastic guy. I was thinking of parallels, and it's interesting comparing the course of career of Bernie Kosar and Baker Mayfield. Bernie Kosar was a guy who had more limited college experience, but a big program, just like Baker had a big program. And Baker only had 1 year, really, at Oklahoma. And Bernie had 2 years at the University of Miami. And coming up, they basically jumped into the starting lineup in approximately the same week of the season. One predicated on Tyrod Taylor's inefficiency and his inability to get the job done. The other was quite planned, with Gary Danielson starting for the Browns. And then after X number of games giving way, the first season was actually very comparable. They were both 500 teams. Under the leadership of Kosar, Kosar had a 1-2 running back combination of Mack and Biner. That now it appears that if Kareem Hunt remains a decent citizen for any length of time, you're going to have an updated version of, Nick Chubb, who would be a more athletic, footwork-oriented Kevin Mack, and a Kareem Hunt, who's a faster, bigger yardage guy than Ernest Biner. And the one thing that Kosar never had was the kind of weaponry as far as at the wide receiver position with Landry and OBJ that Bernie had, where he had to kind of make do with Webster Slaughter and Reggie Langhorne, along with the tail end of Ozzie Newsome's career. But it's interesting comparing the fortunes of the team in both instances and the similarities, except that Bernie, his career couldn't last because his body couldn't hold up, and the fact that he was inescapable. Had a great offensive line. He was based on accuracy, whether he threw the short pass, the intermediate pass, or the long ball. Bernie could thread the needle with the ball. But both men fiery in their own ways. I remember the mic on the sideline catching Bernie Kosar with Marty Schottenheimer, when Schottenheimer was dingleberrying around, getting ready to punt the ball, and Bernie wanted to go for it on 4th down. And Bernie's input was, "Let's play fucking football." It was wonderful watching Bernie Kosar. there's a guy who was a competitor. He was Spartacus, you know. Baker Mayfield is of the same mentality. Just, let's just go for it, man. Confidence galore. Another stuff. Go ahead.
What made Bernie rare was I'm from Boardman, the same high school, hometown. And his high school team was awful. They won like one game a year. He was not a good quarterback at all. And then he just got better as time went on. Like, he was more successful at every level, which was very surprising.
Well, the head coaching situation, very interesting, because Kozar acquired a defensive coordinator in Marty Schottenheimer, a former professional linebacker. But by his second year, Lindy Infante had come into the picture, taking Marty Schottenheimer out of the offensive equation, which was the best thing that could have happened for the Browns. And when we lost Infante to be the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, which he never really did very well at, our offense was not the same. And here's Baker Mayfield, who has to go through the slings and arrows of Quay Jackson, the former revolutionary leader, who's now back in hiding in the hills. And Todd Haley, who and now we have Freddie Kitchens taking over with his ideas, and Monken. This is very similar to year two for Kozar. This is what now Baker Mayfield is looking at, and I hope that Baker, and from all signs so far, he's taking to the offensive concept as well as Bernie did to Infante's. So a lot of interesting correlations between this. And needless to say, in both situations, you go from being a lousy football team to a 500 football team, and then that next year you make the jump into being a playoff team. The Browns for a couple of years were legitimate Super Bowl threats. And, and you got to get yourself into the playoffs to get to the Super Bowl. So I think it's kind of interesting, to see how those things correlate.
Both also came from college programs that Ohio State did not like. No one liked Miami and no one liked Oklahoma.
Yeah, well, I mean, but they had a real reason not to like Baker with his flag planting antics. Yeah. But then again, I mean, this is what motivates the young man. I think that it's great. And then you have the rookie quarterbacks. I was looking around the league. Before I go to that, I wanted to mention that the Ravens won 29-0. Have you even looked into any of the highlights of that game, anybody?
I did. No. I looked at the Ravens game. I also looked at the Eagles and the Tennessee Titans game.
Okay.
The Titans game, I would say, and I'm going to make a prediction right now, you can write this down, that Mac Wilson's going to start against the Titans because Mariota was doing the dink and dunk bullshit sort of passing game, and Mac Wilson's going to fucking eat them alive. Yeah, I mean, and then they also have Tannehill on the team, and I think they may end up with a quarterback controversy because Tannehill was actually trying to throw the ball downfield and was having a little bit of success. But, I mean, if we can, shut down Mariota and his bullshit passing, then we should be able to win that game.
Now, the Ravens ate the Jaguars alive. But
I think a lot of that was in the second half. I watched the first half of it where Lamar Jackson played a lot of that first half, and he handed the ball off a lot. I think Harbaugh was running a really vanilla offense.
Threw a 30-yard completion, and he threw a 6-yard touchdown pass and played the playing. But the Jaguars were not playing Nick Foles. I've never heard of the quarterback.
Oh, something like Melwine or Melwood. It's like some.
Yeah, I mean, obviously not somebody who is particularly good. And 29-0, it was pretty lopsided. I'm going to be watching some condensed games with the NFL Game Pass.
Yeah,
I get to
watch. Do that. It's fantastic. You have to do that.
You just get ripped through a game in 30 minutes or whatever, 40 minutes, and it's really good. So Murray looked good for the Cardinals. Jones looked good for the Giants.
Yeah, he was only given one drive and their line held up. The Giants line looks better than it did. But one thing I would say is that Peppers, still Jabril Peppers, and he paid most of the first half and did dick. The only time you noticed him was when he fucked up, like he missed the coverage, and I'm glad we got rid of him. That's a great trade.
I don't think he was somebody who was going to help us particularly, but I guess Murray looked evasive as far as shaking defenders and getting himself up the field. He also showed some accuracy on the ball. We're going to see as these guys get further in, but you're not going to really know until the real speed of this thing picks up. We know how Haskins fared against the Browns. It's a mixed bag, so it is with rookies, but everyone's keeping a very good watch on these things. Basically, Marone rested Nick Foles. Harbaugh decided to play Lamar Jackson more. Jackson was 4 of 6 for 59 yards and a touchdown. He
handed the ball off a lot. I mean, that was a really dull. I mean, they maybe got 10 points in that first half, and the Jaguars got fuck all. It was a really turned it off.
The quarterback is Minshew, and he was drafted in the 6th round out of Washington State. Boy, there's a real.
He couldn't make it. He's awful.
He's the one who got tackled in the end zone. Has got his helmet knocked.
He was beheaded. Yeah, he was decapitated.
Almost lost his mustache too.
Yeah, I mean, but if I were, first of all, when I see Doug Marone as a coach, I mean, that's not good. Second of all, the fact that Minshew was 7 of 14 for 46 yards, and they gave up 4 sacks, only completed 10 passes in the game. And I'm not, Tanner Lee. Ooh la wee, there goes Tanner Lee. I don't know who these people are, but that's what Jacksonville has to look forward to. And worse yet, that's what Nick Foles has to look forward to. If they're sacking quarterbacks, Nick Foles is not used to getting rocked around playing behind the Eagles' offensive line. So, yeah.
If we're going to play the Ravens twice, we need a running back that can pick up the blitz and not tackle people to the ground. So
yeah, I noticed even when I want to say the 3rd and 5 when Garrett Gilbert had his first possession, even when Hilliard was in position to make that block, he got crushed.
Yeah, he was awful.
He was just ran over, and Gilbert got crushed as well. And there was a 3-step drop, and maybe 2 steps in, Hilliard was on the ground looking at his quarterback getting hit.
Ravens are going to be our 4th opponent, I think, this year too.
Yeah,
Indy's a 3rd down back, so he has to do something.
Well, I'm all for getting Lamar Jackson out of the game, and if we can wipe him out, Trace McSorley is what sits behind him. He was all of 9 of 22 for 85 yards and an interception. So I guess beauty is only skin deep. Another one is Drew Lock, who was sacked 3 more times, 19 yards worth of losses there, was 17 of 28 for 180 yards with an interception. That's another John Elway mistake, just waiting to happen. Young quarterback who's having a rough go of it. Tonight, if you want to see the Steelers play, I know number 7 woman with the big ass and the cellulite wants to see Big Ben play. That's 7:30 against the Buccaneers. And also we have Tony the Calf's Minnesota Vikings at 8 o'clock against the New Orleans Saints. And if you're wondering what happens on Saturday, well, if you're lucky, you get blown. But if that doesn't happen for you, the Bengals and the Chiefs at 8 o'clock, the Rams and the Raiders at 8 o'clock, and the Cowboys and the 49ers at 9 o'clock. So some games, if you're part of that league pass package, that you'll be looking at. So that's not a bad thing. We're up to the top of the hour, man. Parting shot. Oh, how could I miss this? We have to talk about, and I'm going to extend the show a little bit. Antonio Brown. I want the panelists' input on this, starting with Rick. Tell me, what do you do when you give up what you give up to get this guy, and this is what you get in return?
Well, maybe him and John Gruden just deserve each other. If they needed any other characters to be in Hard Knocks, they couldn't have picked a better person. Him and his cryogenic chamber and whatever. And
well, they're saying that's not it. They're saying
now his helmet. He won't wear his. He won't play football unless he can wear his old helmet, which has not been safety approved now by the NFL. He has to do this new helmet now, which is supposedly safer than the old one. He says, "I'm wearing my old one, or I will not play football." And I'm thinking, please, just.
You know what Rox
on the way out.
You know what Rox would say in a case like this? And I want her to say this the way she says it. Good grief.
I think I would be more likely to say sheesh.
Oh, okay. Sheesh. That's another one. Thank you for that. Go ahead, Jake.
Well, what do you get when you give a receiver who's a diva like $20 million guaranteed a year?
Headache.
That's what happened right now. Yeah, they gave him all the guaranteed money, and I think he just kind of checked out. So I'm not surprised, and I could see him honestly trying to come back if they're a decent team and just collecting his paycheck. Or just
I'm not going to play with anything but a 10-year-old helmet because the new helmets they've endorsed for use in the league reduce my vision in catching the ball. And I'm never going to play again if I don't get to play with my helmet.
Can we get that in writing?
Oh my God. Bronk, what do you do with it?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, I think he's probably seen Derek Carr in practice, and that's what's putting him off wanting to go on the field. Derek Carr is just like a pretty average to moderately.
But you know what people in Pittsburgh are saying? See, it wasn't Big Ben all along. It was Antonio. He was the problem, and maybe they're right. I mean, gosh, I can't imagine. It's like, oh, would you suck it up? I mean, you've been playing for how many years? You probably are on the road to CTE, and you're worried about a 10-year-old helmet. I mean, please grow up. I mean, what do you do if you're his goddamn agent?
Did you watch the Hard Knocks?
No, I really, with the exception of the Browns last year, I try not to.
You should watch it because I'll make this comment about Derek Carr because if you see how Baker Mayfield is with the Browns and you see how Derek Carr is with the Raiders, the Browns love Baker and Baker loves the Browns. Derek Carr, does he love the Raiders? And do the Raiders love him back? I don't think so. There's a totally different vibe with Carr, and I think that's part of the problem why this team will never amount to much. They don't have the same respect for Derek Carr that the Browns have for Baker Mayfield, and that's pretty clear watching this Hard Knocks.
Maybe you can turn that watch Hard Knocks, make it a drinking game. Every time you hear the word diva or Chucky, do a shot. It'll make the show worth watching anyway. It'll be bearable.
If you watch it, you'll appreciate the Browns even more.
Well, just think about how bad that locker room must have been seeing how Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown are outside of Big Ben's watch. Like, I used to say Big Ben was a bad leader, but seeing how they are outside of it makes me realize that Big Ben might have kept him under control for a long time.
Yeah, the final thing I want to say is, where is Kajusti, the guy who is the Browns tight end? Is he even trying to make a roster this year?
He should be on TV. He's like Joe Sharba now. They should get a TV job.
A reality show for him. Yeah, but every year there's going to be a Sheehy Giuseppe. There's going to be a Kajusti. There's going to be somebody like that who and then they're here today, gone tomorrow. I would really like to find out what happened to Kajust because It wasn't that he was a bad football player. It's just that he didn't block well enough to be a tight end, and he wasn't prolific enough as a receiver. But you wonder if he's in camp anywhere. I'll probably check that after the show.
Hey, get him on the show. You might want to come on Moohead Radio.
Yeah, I'm sure he really wants to be on this show.
Guest analyst or something, or analyst or whatever. Yeah.
The analyst, yeah. Thanks, everybody, for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Hey, what can I tell you? It's Friday, which means we'll be back on Monday. And I didn't even get a chance to talk about the Indians game 2 against the Twins. They hung in there last night. Brad Hand gave us the ultimate hand job in the end. And he pulled out what looked like it could be a bad situation. And Rick Manning and Matt Underwood were sounding mighty, mighty depressed with the bases loaded and one lunging a swing, and the game was over, and 7-5 victory. We'll see. We have a better chance, in my estimation, tonight because we've got Shane Bieber going up against a guy I've never heard of. So
the guy who never heard of is going to throw a two-hitter.
If he throws nothing but 82-mile-an-hour changeups, we're dead meat. But hey, we score 7 runs, we're going to win. And the Indians got to keep hitting the ball. Hopefully, Franmil Reyes will start finding the ball. Right now that's been a tough adjustment for him. Puig is hitting the ball. That's fine. And we're still getting help from Kipnis. And Ramirez is still on fire, folks. So, hey, that's something to tune into right now. Game 2. Actually, I think at 8 o'clock that'll be starting.
Yeah, Minnesota time, 8:10.
Yeah. And so check that out. And you can all sit there, and with men on base, you can do your Bruce Drennan saying, "There are ducks on the pod, Joe." You can do that. Whatever.
Oh, it's Bruce. We haven't heard from him for a while. What's he thinking?
No. Yeah, we run in different crowds. He's he's so high above me. Thanks everybody for tuning into this edition of Moohead Radio. Back again on Monday, and I appreciate the support on the halftime and post-game shows. Let's see if we can get the views up as the season progresses, back up to over 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 views on these things. The team is going to be worth it, and I want the fans on the show. So until Monday, hasta la vista, Pastor Heads. Good night.